Welcome to today's Spotlight, and it is my absolute pleasure today to feature Rachael Steedman, who is the Colleague Experience Director in the People team at Aegon. So first of all, welcome Rachael to today's Spotlight.
Thanks, Katie. It's lovely to be here.
Well, I'm delighted to have you because today we are going to be speaking about colleague experience. And you and I have spoken about this for some while, actually, but it is becoming a topic that is really prominent in this ever-changing landscape of HR, and one that is proving to be a key driver for real transformation in businesses. So, as I've said, I am super excited to be hearing from you on this topic today, Rachael. So, as I've said, welcome to Spotlight. Now, before we begin, just for the benefit of the listeners, are you able to tell us a little bit more about your own career, just to set the scene, so to speak?
Yeah, sure, absolutely, Katie. So, yeah, I guess I started my career over 25 years ago now, or around about 25 years ago. I guess was very young when I started my career. And yeah, throughout that career, I've always worked in human resources. So that has been my field and my profession, but across quite a wide variety of roles, obviously, over that time. So started my career as a young graduate, but then moving into more generalist roles, I would really describe it as, so kind of consultancy and business partnering, and also some specialist roles. So I spent a bit of time in employee relations as well. And also I would say transformation and change is a key feature of my career. So if people look me up on LinkedIn, they would see that I've spent quite a bit of time on merger and acquisition type activity, and also on big org design type projects across a variety of different organizations. Financial services appears to be my bag because I've always worked in financial services, but again, across a variety of different organizations, all slightly different size, scale, complexity, and I guess cultures as well. But yeah, it's been, I suppose, a fascinating kind of 25 years to see the profession grow and to learn lots. And then I guess I'd say kind of in the last 5 to 6 years is probably when my roles have become more senior in nature, and I've been sitting on people leadership teams, both in my previous organisation and in Aegon, and joined Aegon. It's almost 2 years since I joined Aegon. I joined in March 2023. And initially, I joined Aegon actually on a transformation project to support Arlene and the leadership team on looking at how we evolve and grow and develop the HR function.
Amazing. I mean, what a career, absolutely. And as you say, I think to give a bit of context, actually, before we go into the colleague experience part, it would be really good if you could tell me about some of the changes the people function have made in Aegon UK over the last 12 months, because I know there have been changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, probably some of the changes predate that as well, because Arlene, I think, joined the organisation about 3 years ago. So obviously, she will have started to already implement changes when she joined the people function. But when she asked me to come and join the organisation, it was really to do quite a deep review of our operating model, and that was quite wide-ranging. It wasn't just structural in nature. It was, what are our processes, what is our technology, what are our ways of working, and also what is our structure in order to be able to really set us up for success for this kind of next phase. And about 12 months ago, we then effectively moved to our new target operating model. So I guess a few key features that I would call out. One is, and it relates to colleague experience, because we decided to effectively put that at the heart of our vision. So our vision as a people function, as we now call ourselves, is to put colleagues and candidates at the heart of everything that we do. And that's all the way from day-to-day service delivery through to the propositions and the products and the policies that we have. But a few other key features would be, as I've said, we changed the name from human resources to people. And whilst that might seem like a small thing, I think it's quite symbolic, because really the role that we perform is about making Aegon a great place to work for our people, hence the people function. A few other things that we have done is we did change the structure, and that's when my role of colleague experience was colleague experience director was born out of that. And I took up that role, and we have a number of other obviously key leadership roles across that across the people function as well, in the kind of centres of expertise type space, and then strategic business partnering as well. So not necessarily unfamiliar to other HR operating models, but also critically, we've introduced some new capabilities, specifically, I would say, in the sphere of colleague experience and also digital employee experience, which is really critical to our mission. So whilst we haven't structured ourselves around colleague experience journeys, what we have done is we've started to orientate ourselves to that desire to put colleagues and candidates at the heart of everything we do. So hopefully that gives a flavour of what we've done.
Absolutely, 100%. And as I said at the start in the intro, you and I have spoken about this whole concept of colleague experience, and it is becoming, there's no doubt about it, becoming more prominent for a number of organisations. We hear people talking about it a lot, and you and I spoke several months ago about featuring you on Spotlight about this very topic. So why do you think colleague experience is becoming more prominent in organisations, whether that be Aegon or another business? What is it about colleague experience that's making it more prominent, do you think?
Yeah, and absolutely, you kind of see these jobs popping up and this job title popping up more and more, don't you? So I think it's about actually the external world, and I think it's about external and workforce expectations. So workforce expectations are changing. Like you and I, in terms of the way that we operate in our day-to-day lives, we are used to consumer experiences, and we are used to those experiences being, super personalized and very service orientated in terms of the way those experience, whether it be your iPhones or your Googles or whatever it happens to be, but we're used to much more personalization, and we're used to, I guess, a different standard of service. And so colleagues are rightly saying, well, we expect the same when we come to work, and so therefore we want you to think about this through an experience lens. They won't be using that language, but that is what they are expecting us to do. So that's kind of one thing. The other thing also is, like consumers, candidates also have the opportunity to choose where they work. So it's more and more challenging to attract the best talent. So we need to make sure that we've got the right candidate and colleague experience so that we can also attract the best talent at Aegon. And then there's also just a real business driver behind it. So improving the colleague experience absolutely does improve engagement, and we fundamentally do believe, and all the research would also show, that also helps you to drive better productivity and critically better customer engagement. And particularly within Aegon, it aligns very strongly to our business mission overall. So we are growing and simplifying as a business. And as part of that, we're also looking at the customer experience and driving better customer outcomes. So it kind of follows that if you drive the right colleague experience, you're helping colleagues to perform and be at their best every day, which then enables them to drive better customer outcomes. So that's why it's important, I think, more generally, but also why it's really important to us at Aegon.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's like the whole colleague consumer piece, they should go hand in hand, as you quite rightly said there. If you have happy consumers, they're dealing with happy colleagues, then it should be a positive outcome, shouldn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
And for you specifically, Rachel, in your capacity as colleague experience director, how are you driving this focus on colleague experience at Aegon?
Yes. So a, a number of a number of things. I guess first of all, we kind of took a bit of a step back to say this is new to us. We are starting to orientate ourselves to colleague experience. So how are we going to approach that? So we essentially started by starting to pull together a framework, a colleague experience framework.
Okay.
And we've identified like 5 big key experiences. Some organizations call them moments that matter. And those 5 experiences for us are around joining Aegon. We call it being at Aegon. Some organizations call it life at Aegon or life at. So that's all your day-to-day experiences with us. Then we have belonging. We have thriving, and we also have leaving Aegon. So that kind of gets you all the way through the colleague life cycle, if you like, right from even before you are a colleague and a candidate, all the way through to leaving and then beyond leaving, where your alumni will be quite an important population for you as well. So that was kind of starting point. So what's the framework and how are we going to structure it? And then we actually had also undertaken, as part of our kind of transformation project, quite a big deep dive voice of the customer exercise with our colleagues and hiring managers, and managers being our customers. So we had quite a lot of data from that, and we used that data to effectively inform where should we go first, because obviously there's a number of experiences, and trying to look across all of that in one go could be, quite the job. So instead of doing that, what we've decided to do was we decided to kind of start in one particular area, and that was a big focus for last year. So that was looking at our end-to-end joining experience, and you and my colleague, who I know you've had on your podcast before, Ewan was actually our overall sponsor of that, because what we have done, even though we're not structurally orientating ourselves around the colleague experiences, we have aligned a member of our people leadership team to be accountable for each of these experiences, to drive that accountability, to drive the end-to-end nature of it. Yes, and we did a massive piece of work on the end-to-end joining experience last year to get us going, which I can tell you more about if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I was going to ask you about kind of what work are you doing in this space, and you've mentioned a couple of key things there. I mean, is there anything else that you would say you would want to share with the listeners around the work that you're doing in this whole colleague experience space?
Yeah, so I think in terms of the joining experience, it maybe would be good to talk about that in a wee bit more detail in terms of what we actually did and what some of the outcomes were there. So we kind of looked at the full experience, and what we did is we essentially identified what were the pain points across that end-to-end experience. What were the things that we wanted to do better? And we looked at it through the lens of the hiring managers, the candidates, but also the people team, so that we would make sure that any of the improvements that we would put in place, that they would be helpful to everybody who was involved in the joining experience, essentially. And we also have adopted some new ways of working and how we've done that. But critically, I would say the big thing here has been really listening to our hiring managers and also our recent joiners. So we kind of brought a cohort of those people together, and we used that cohort in both the design phases and the testing phases to make sure that the things that we were doing were going to hit the mark, that they were going to be desirable, feasible, etc. And it kind of human-centered design methodologies effectively in practice is what we were doing. So it's been a really exciting piece of work. I guess in terms of outcomes, we have made several changes to our joining experience. So we've streamlined our approvals process for BAU hiring, making it easier for the hiring managers. We've improved our guidance, because they're really at the forefront of that candidate engagement and also the assessment of candidates as well. So trying to make it easier for them, trying to support them more so that ultimately they could support candidates.
Mm-hmm.
We've reduced and automated a number of our recruitment and onboarding processes. So again, make it slicker, better, easier, not just for us, but for candidates as well. And also then we've kind of thought it's not just about the kind of, I suppose, the recruitment elements of that joining experience. It's also about what's your day one onboarding experience. So we've really focused in on trying to make that a smoother and more engaging interaction for colleagues as they join us on day one, and then improving both our we've got an Aegon UK-wide business induction. So we've made improvements to that, but we've also, I suppose, shared tools with managers and with the business to really help them with that business induction and I suppose what we'd probably call like path to competence or maybe even path to confidence, in your role over that first 90 days. So quite a range of different things. It's been a big project, involved many people across the function, lots of fun and lots of new ways of working as well, and some really, really great results. I'd just love to share a couple of stats with you before we move on. But so our new joiner experience score. So we do a kind of engagement survey with our new joiners after they have been with us. I think it's for 6 weeks or maybe 90 days. And our new joiner experience score, we've managed to now get that to 92%. So it's absolutely excellent. I mean, we had quite a high base to begin with, but we were sitting at about 85%, and to now have it 92% just feels
significant increase. Absolutely
wonderful. And the other key performance indicator that we were looking at was also the time to offer, because we know how challenging it can be out there, and if you don't get that time to offer right, then obviously you can lose talent. So we've also managed to decrease our time to offer, which again was quite good to begin with, but we've managed to decrease that by 15%, which we're delighted with. So quite a lot.
What I hear you say a lot is the word easy. It's also the word about evolving your processes to make them better, more efficient.
Yes.
These are all the sort of things that if you're looking to, as you quite rightly pointed out, if you're looking to engage, whether it be your consumers, your hiring managers, your stakeholders, your colleagues, your employees, you need to make it accessible. You need to make them want to do it. And a big part of that is keeping a process fit for purpose, but also easy and accessible.
Absolutely.
So it's been really nice to hear you talk through that. And certainly your last point around some of the data, you've led seamlessly into my next question, because we all know that, business leaders now do look for that validation when it comes to people-led decisions. So I was going to ask you, you kind of answered some of it actually in your last piece, but, how are you measuring the impact of the work that you're doing around colleague experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I think what I would say is we have probably what we would call, I'm going to call soft benefits and hard benefits to this work. And it's really critical for us to measure both of those things. So if we go back to the joining experience, we had a number of kind of softer benefits that we were looking to achieve, but we also did want to give ourselves, what are the actual hard benefits here? What can we see that's a measurable difference? And we set ourselves those targets, and delighted to say, obviously, that we have achieved them. In relation to the other experiences and journeys, we will do exactly the same thing as that. So we'll talk a bit more about kind of future plans, but for each of those different experiences, we will identify, and we've pulled together recently a people dashboard that starts to pull out some of those key performance indicators for each of those experiences. So for example, if you're thinking about, let's use Thrive as an example, part of the thriving experience is all about the learning and the development that our colleagues have access to and have the opportunity to participate in. So we have, I guess, a learning portal that colleagues have the opportunity to access, and it's got some fantastic material on there. So one of the things that we target there is actually utilisation of and participation in the different ranges of learning that are available within that portal would be one example. Yes, and so we many different examples across all of those experiences. And then the next area that we're intending to focus on, we will also start to be clear about what some of our KPIs are in relation to that, so that I suppose that we're holding ourselves accountable ultimately.
But
the key thing really is it's not about what's important to us. It's about what's important to, whether that be the colleague, the candidate, the manager, and making sure that we're sort of orientating the KPIs and the benefits around them, as opposed to what's going to be satisfactory for us. We might get side benefits around efficiency, etc., but it's not the driver.
Yeah, it's like when I'm listening to you, it really is, well, for me, the true definition of being people-centric. You know, and that is what it should be around, you know, ultimately. So when we look at colleague experience at Aegon UK, what are the plans? I mean, you mentioned there briefly, let's talk a little bit about what your plans are for the rest of the year. So what are your plans?
Yes. So as I said, you know, you can look across all those experiences and go, wow, that feels like a lot. And is that the right, you know, do you go after everything? And it's probably a little bit in the way that I operate, but, you know, I always think better to be focused and prioritize and do things and do them well, rather than try and do everything and maybe not have the same impact that you would like to have. So our next focus area, again, is a data-led decision in the same way that it was for the joining experience. We knew that was where we needed to go first. All of the data that we're looking at the minute effectively tells us that the next area to focus on sits within that being area, but is a bit more targeted than that, because underneath being we have all sorts of journeys underneath that as well, but is much more targeted at well-being and absence. So that is going to be our real focus area for this year. And again, it's partly about looking at what's going on externally. So, you know, across all industries in the UK, organisations and colleagues are having, I guess, challenges around absence, seeing higher levels of burnout and stress. You see that in the external research. I think one particular piece that we were looking at suggested that long-term absence is predicted to increase by a further 53% in the next 5 years. So that's compelling in terms of paying attention to that. And I guess, you know, we all see in terms of trends across the UK, challenges in terms of health, whether that be age-related, obesity, mental health issues, are a big challenge, particularly for the younger population. And we also know that our health services are under pressure. So all of that external context, clearly we are not immune to that in Aegon, and we need to pay attention to that. And whilst we have, I would say, a very good offering at the moment to support colleague well-being and also absence, we think that this is the right place to pay attention to. In terms of our business goals and drivers, we need colleagues to be at their best. We need them to be thriving. So we want to make sure that we support that colleague well-being so that they can do that. So that is the next big focus area. And we are just about to embark on some work where we're going to do some really deep qualitative and quantitative research to really get underneath the skin of the root causes of those challenges for our colleagues at Aegon, identifying what some of the right solutions are, and then critically making sure that they're sustainable solutions so that colleagues can essentially be at their best. So that's the biggie for this year. And then we probably have a couple of other specific journeys that we would like to hone in on as well. So we'd like to look at our returners journey, and what I mean by that is if a colleague is off on maternity leave or perhaps on long-term absence, that we help them to return in the right way and support them in the right way so that they can get back to work, feel confident and perform at their best again. Because we know that that can be challenging for colleagues when you've been out for a longer period of time. You can feel like the world's changed in many ways. Nothing has changed that much, but sometimes it feels a bit overwhelming. So really keen to support on that side of things. And the other piece we're intending to take a look at is internal mobility. So I suppose helping colleagues with their career journey and making that as smooth and as supportive as we possibly can.
Rachel, I haven't said this to you before, but I will absolutely be knocking on your door again because I want to check in again, probably in the next sort of 6 to 12 months, just to find out how that journey is going, because it's been a real delight hearing about all of the good work that you and the people team are doing at Aegon. So thank you so much for your time and insights today. As per usual, I will tag you in the post when it goes out so that if people have any questions, which I'm quite confident you may have quite a few messages in your inbox, because as we said right at the start, this whole topic of colleague experience done correctly is a real driver for real change in organisations. So thank you again so much, Rachel.
You're welcome, and it was lovely. Yeah, lovely to be with you today, Katie.
Cheers.